In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can add an advanced enemy into your space shooter game. So as you can see, we've got that green guy that appears on the screen every so often shooting bullets at us. He is our advanced enemy. If we get hit by the bullets, we will lose a bar of health. And if we get hit by the green ship itself, we will also lose a bar of health. Okay, we are also able to shoot the green guy, which will give us double the points, so 2 points. Compared to the red guys. Let's just see if I can shoot one for you. There you go. Okay, so you can see we did get double points there. It was on 2, went up to 4. Alright, so that's what we're adding in this tutorial, just that green second enemy spaceship. What you'll need to do first up is load up Scratch and make sure you've got your project open from where we left off last lesson. And we're going to need to bring in the green enemy sprite first of all. So to do that, you'll need to get a copy of that green sprite. If you're in my class, I'll give it to you. However, if you're watching on YouTube, check out the link in the video description below. Once you've got it saved into your account, hit the blue button down here in your sprite list and select Upload Sprite. Grab the green enemy and he will appear in your game rather large. So I'll get you to resize it from 100% down to 25%. It'll come in at a much nicer size. Quickly go to your costume tab up here as well and flip it vertically just so he's facing down the page, because that is the direction he's going to be flying in. Okay, now to start the coding, you've got to think back to when we did the red enemy. Okay, instead of having the original red enemy sprite falling down the page, what we did is we ended up hiding that and we created clones of the red enemy to fall down the page constantly throughout the game. And we're going to do the same for this green enemy. So the first thing I want to do is hide the original green sprite and just create clones of it, or duplicates of the green enemy to fall down the page. So I'm going to go over to my events and drag out when the green flag is clicked. And the first thing I'm going to do is just go to my looks and hide that green spaceship. After that, I'm going to go to control and I'm going to create a clone of myself. Okay, so it just duplicates that green enemy spaceship. Now we want that to occur throughout our game. Okay, so we get multiple copies or clones of the green spaceship falling down from the sky. So I think every 5 to 10 seconds would be a good amount of time for this green ship to appear on our screen. So I'm going to go to wait 1 second and drop that in there. And in operators, I'm going to say pick random 5 to 10. So the computer's going to randomly pick somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds to create a clone of that green spaceship. Okay. Now if we run that code now, it would do it once. But if we want it to go on constantly throughout our game, we need to wrap those last 2 blocks of code up in a forever loop. So we are always creating clones of the green spaceship every 5 to 10 seconds. That's the first section of code done. Second thing we need to do is get that clone moving down the page. So in your control tab, bring out the next block of code that says when I start as a clone. And first of all, you need to get it to go to some X and Y coordinates for its starting position. So basically, I want it to start at the very top of the page. Well, actually just above the top of the page, so it has room to fall down into the screen. It can start anywhere on the x-axis, so anywhere between the left and right side of the page. So in my operators, I'm going to get the computer to randomly pick a x position to start at, between -200 and 200, so basically the left hand and right hand sides of the page. For the y value, I'm going to set it to 200, which is just above the top of the stage. Once it's in position, we can go to our looks and we can show it. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get it to point in the direction of our spaceship. So we want this green guy to be angled towards our spaceship, which means he's going to fly in the same direction we are located. So to get it flying down the page, it's no different to what we've done before with the red enemy. We just need to use a repeat until loop. So we're going to tell this green ship to move down the page at about a speed of 4. And it's going to keep moving until it hits the bottom of the page. So we're going to bring in the less than symbol. And we're going to look at the Y position. So We're going to keep repeating this move block of code until the Y position of our enemy ship is less than minus 180, which means it's gone below the bottom of the page. So I might make it minus 185 just to make it run a bit smoother. I did test this before and it works better at minus 185. So it's going to keep moving down the page until it hits that position. Once our green ship hits the bottom of the page, we just want to delete it. So in Control, select delete this clone and snap it to the bottom of that block of code. So this section here will get our green ship moving down the page in the direction of our spaceship. So let's test it and see what happens. Remember, when it hits the bottom of the page, it should disappear as well. Come on, green ship. Okay, there he is. He's falling down the page in our direction. He disappears when he hits the bottom. You probably saw the issue though. He's facing the wrong way. So all we need to do is go to costumes there, and using this arrow tool here, we're going to have to draw a box over the top of our spaceship. And I think to fix our angle issue is we just need to hold shift and click and drag to rotate it so he's facing out to the right. Now when you run your code, we should have that green ship facing the right direction, just straight towards us. There we go. So it's the bottom of the page, he disappears. So that's a good start. Next thing I'm going to do is when the green ship hits us, I want us to lose a bar of health. Okay, so I'm just going to push this out of the way for a moment. Bring out another block of code that says when I start as a clone. And we need to check to see if, oops, come on, if then, if the spaceship, sorry, if the enemy is touching our spaceship. There we go, that's what we're looking for. So if the green enemy ship is touching our spaceship, then we want to play a sound like we've been hit. So just go over to your sounds and select that lose sound again. You know the one. We're going to delete the first two parts of that sound wave by highlighting it and pressing delete. We're also going to highlight the end of that sound wave and delete that. We'll be left with that sound there. And in sounds, we're just going to bring out start sound lose. In variables, we're going to change lives by -1. And we also want the green enemy ship to disappear once it hits our spaceship. So in the Control tab, just delete this clone. Oops. Okay, now if we run that, the code would run once as soon as we press the green flag, but then it would stop running. So to keep it running constantly throughout our game, always listening out to see if our spaceship and our enemy ship collide, then we need to wrap it up in a forever loop. Okay, so drop that down there. Now when we run it, we should be able to hit that green enemy ship and lose a bar of health, as well as here, a negative sound. Okay, so that is working well. The other thing I want it to do is I want this green ship to be able to be shot out of the sky, basically. So we need to bring out one more block of code that says when I start as a clone, and it's another if-then statement, quite similar to what we just did. And we need to be sensing if we are touching the bullet. So if the green enemy ship is touching the bullet, then we're going to play another sound, which we need to load in. It's called Zoop. We've used it before. Okay, so we want to start that sound Zoop. We also want to get a score. So we're going to change our, not lives, but our score by 2. Remember, we want 2 points for killing the green guy because he's a little bit harder to kill than the red guy. And don't forget to delete this clone as well. So as soon as the bullet hits the green ship will disappear. And again, this section needs to be wrapped up in a forever loop. So the computer is always listening out for when the green enemy ship touches the bullet. Okay, let's have a crack at shooting a green ship out of the sky, so long as these red guys don't get in the way. Perfect. You can see we've got 2 points added to our score as well. Okay, so that is working well. The last thing we're going to add into this green enemy sprite is quite complex. Okay, so it might be a little bit confusing, but just bear with me. Hopefully it makes a little bit more sense by the end of the tutorial. What we want to do is we want to get this green enemy ship shooting bullets at us. Okay, so we're going to need to bring out a block of code that says when I start as a clone. And in this section of code, what we're going to do, or all we're going to do, is we're going to get the X and Y coordinates of the enemy ship. And we're also going to find out the direction it's facing. And we're going to save those 3 pieces of data into something called a list. Okay, once we've got that data saved into a list, we can reuse it later on to make sure the bullet comes out of the enemy ship and heads off in the right direction. Okay, so let's just put this code in and I'll explain what's happening once it's in. We need to wrap it up in a forever loop. We need to go down to our variables because we are going to make a new variable. So make a variable and we're going to call it bullet counter. Click OK. So for every bullet that our enemy ship shoots, it's going to have a unique number attached to it. Okay, so I'm going to just drag in this bit of code that says change bullet counter by 1. So each time we shoot a bullet, this number is going to go up by 1. So each bullet that appears on the page from the enemy ship is going to have a unique number attached to it, which we're going to use later on in our code. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make up some lists. We're going to make 3 lists. The first one is going to be called direction. We're going to make another list and call it X position. And make a final list called Y position. And we'll click OK. So basically what these are lists that are going to hold information. Okay, up here you can see on our screen we've got 3 lists, and it's going to hold the X and Y coordinates of our enemy ship as well as the direction it's facing. We don't need to see these 3 lists on the screen, so just uncheck those boxes. While we're at it, we don't need to see the bullet counter either, so just uncheck the bullet counter box. Okay, now with these 3 lists, this is where it gets a little bit confusing, but just add this code in and I'll explain it to you in a minute. I want you to add thing to direction, add that in 3 times. Okay, the first one needs to say X position, second one needs to say Y position, the final one needs to say direction. And then we're going to go to the motion tab and scroll towards the bottom and you'll see X position, which can go in the first thing box, Y position in the next one, and direction in the last one. Okay, so this is saying when the green enemy ship starts as a clone, we're going to store its X position in a list called X position. We're going to store its Y position on the Y-axis in a list called Y position, and we're going to store the direction it's facing into a list called direction. So it's just saving some data for us, which we're going to use in a moment when we create an enemy bullet. Okay, so we might actually do that now. Instead of creating a bullet from scratch, I'm just going to reuse this one. So I'm going to right click on our bullet that already exists and duplicate that sprite. And instead of calling it bullet 2, I'm going to call it enemy bullet. Okay, now all the code that you can see on the enemy bullet, I want you to delete. Just click and drag it over to the side there. We don't need it. And I want you to change its costume. So click on it and change its fill color. First color I want to be a blue. Second color a pink. And that looks good. So I can go back to the code. Okay, that's our enemy bullet, which we'll code up shortly. For now though, just go back to your enemy 2, your green enemy ship. So we need to add a little bit more code. Okay, so as I said before, now that we've got the data here for the X and Y coordinates of our enemy ship, as well as the direction it's facing, we can create a bullet. Okay, so we're going to create a clone of this enemy bullet to appear in these positions. So let's go to Control and select Create Clone of, change myself to Enemy Bullet. And the last bit of code we can throw in here is a wait code. And we're going to just randomly put in 1 to 5 seconds. And all that's saying is our enemy ship, when it shoots an enemy bullet, those enemy bullets are going to be coming out every 1 to 5 seconds from the enemy ships. The computer will randomly pick a time that it wants those bullets to be shot at, but anywhere between 1 and 5 seconds we'll see these enemy bullets being shot out of the enemy ship. Okay, I told you that'd be a little bit confusing and we're not finished yet, but hopefully you got a vague idea at least of what's going on in that section of code. Okay, so to keep confusing you, we're going to head over to the bullet now, and we're going to start coding up our enemy bullet. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is go to events, and when the green flag is clicked, I want to hide this original bullet. Remember, we're working with clones, so we're going to hide the original bullet. That's the first little snippet of code. And instead we're working with clones, so let's go into the control tab here and bring out when I start as a clone. Remember over here we already created a clone of our bullet. Okay, that's created as soon as our enemy green ship is created. So when our bullet is created, what I want to do is I want to show it on the screen, and I want to play a sound of that bullet being shot out of the enemy ship. So we need something a little bit different to when we shoot. So I'm going to go into sounds here, and I'm going to delete the two sounds that are already in there and load in a new one, which is going to be in percussion, and it's going to be down the bottom called snare drum. If we speed this up a little bit, it sounds like I guess, a very vague bullet being shot. Okay, so I'm going to use that bit of code, and I'm going to drag in start sound snare drum. So once our bullet appears on the screen, we're going to play the sound of a snare drum as if it's being shot. Now the next couple of lines of code are a little bit confusing. Okay, it's basically getting our bullet in the right position, ready to be fired out of the enemy. So I'm going to first of all get the bullet pointing in the right direction. So we need to go to motion, and actually point in direction is what we want. And in variables, bring out the list section here that says item 1 of direction. I want you to make it item bullet counter, so grab that variable of direction. Okay, so the first bullet that the enemy shoots out is going to have a value of 1. So first of all, it's going to look at item 1, which is the first bullet that's been shot, and it's going to look at the direction it's facing, and it's going to apply it to this enemy bullet. Okay. As the second bullet gets fired, the direction is probably going to change because our spaceship's going to be moving around at the bottom there, and whatever way we move, the enemy ship's going to move. Okay, so we need to make sure our bullets continually face the right direction, which is towards our spaceship. So each time the bullet counter reappears, okay, it's going to just change its direction so it's facing towards our spaceship. The next thing we're going to bring in is the X and Y value, so the coordinates for this bullet. It's going to be pretty similar to this red code here, so I'm just going to duplicate that red code twice and drop it in the X and Y values there. And it's going to say item bullet counter of X position, and then item bullet counter of Y position. So in simple terms, what we've done there is we've got the bullet facing the right direction, which is towards our spaceship, and it's put it in the appropriate X and Y coordinates, which is basically right on top of or underneath the enemy ship. Okay, once it is in position, so you've got the bullet in position, ready to be shot out of the enemy ship, we just use another one of those repeat until loops to make it fall down the page. So let's just do what we've done before. So repeat until the Y position is below the bottom of the page, and what we're repeating is moving the bullet. 10 steps to what we're going to move the bullet at, so fairly quick. Once it reaches that bottom section of the page, so it gets down below the bottom of the page there, we are simply going to delete that clone. Alright, so that is looking alright. A little bit confusing, yeah, I know. Let's give it a test run. It's not going to work yet, but let's just see what those bullets are currently doing. We're going to run it. Let's wait for a green ship to come on and see where those bullets end up. Okay. Not bad, it is heading towards us. Okay, what we need to do is just swing that bullet around the right way. So I think in costumes, what we're going to have to do here is just highlight it. I think if we swing it around to the left while holding shift, like that, we'll hopefully have our bullet facing the right way when he gets shot at us. Let's have a look. Come on, green dude. Okay, there we go. Let me me just have another look at that. I think it might have been back to front. Yeah, it's back to front. So we're just going to have to highlight it and make sure it's facing out to the right. My mistake, so just rotate it around. That should have it looking pretty good. So let's have a look. Yep, so that's looking good. Okay, so we've got him shooting out pretty nicely. So what I want to do next on this enemy bullet here is what happens if the bullet touches our spaceship. Well, basically we want to lose a bar of health. So we've done this code before, so let's not take too long with it. I want to start as a clone. We want to bring in a forever loop and do an if-then statement to see if we are touching the spaceship. Okay, if our enemy bullet is touching the spaceship, then we want to play the sound lose, which I don't think we've got in there yet. So we're going to have to load it in one more time. And remember to chop off the start of the sound wave there by pressing delete, and chopping off the end by pressing delete. You'll get that sound lose. So just drop in start sound lose. You also want to change lives by -1. So take off a bar of health. And don't forget, we want to delete this clone. So that means we are deleting the enemy bullet once it hits our ship. Let's give it another test run. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. Okay, so you saw him take off a bar of health and it disappeared as soon as it hit our ship. We also heard that funny little noise. Alright, so that is looking good. What we can do next, just in the controller tab here, I just want to add a little bit of code in. It didn't really affect our game, but it may affect it further down the track. I just want to reset our variable bullet counter each time we start our game. And I also want to delete all the information inside those lists called direction, X position and Y position, so it doesn't get confused with previous runnings of our game. So simply in variables here, just drag out set bullet counter to 0 and snap it in underneath when the green flag is clicked here. So it's just setting up our game. We set that bullet counter to 0, and I want you to choose the delete all of direction and duplicate that another 2 times. Whoops. And I want you to have X position, Y position and direction. Get all their information deleted from those lists each time we start the game. Okay, and that should be just about it. Let's just try it one more time to make sure it's all working. Okay, don't care about the red guys. The bullets are good. We can shoot the green guy. He can shoot us, hopefully. Let's just have another look and take some health off us. He hits us. His health. So that is looking good. One thing you might have noticed is when I shoot the green guy, the bullet goes straight through him. So we might just quickly duck over to this bullet here. And, oops, looks like I've already done it in a previous bit there, but you just need to make sure, I think yours will be looking something like that at the moment. Just need to make sure that if we are touching enemy 1 or enemy 2, and we wait a second and delete this clone. And that is going to delete our bullet as soon as we hit the enemy ship. So this is what you'll need to add to yours. You just saw me delete it, but I'm going to add it in again. So if we're touching enemy 1, oops, or if we're touching enemy 2, then we can delete that bullet. So now when I shoot the green fella, hopefully my bullet won't go straight through him, it'll just disappear once I hit him. Okay, that went straight through. Now, I have found a glitch in Scratch that it does do that occasionally, but more often than not, it shouldn't do that. Let's just try it one more time. There, so it is working. So there is a bit of a glitch, I don't know why. It'll occasionally go through him. More often than not, the bullet will disappear as soon as you hit the green guy. Okay, so that's about the best I can get it for now. Okay, so that was just adding that little section in on our red and yellow bullet. Okay, apart from that, I think we are all done in this video. I'm going to come back in one final video and show you how to add a meteor to your game that will fall down from the sky, so just another object for us to avoid. Once we've got that, I think we're going to have a finished game on our hands. Okay, so I'll catch you in that last video.